Stephen Lim Kor Kor has just revealed explicit details of his condominium purchase that he has never shared before in his new video. So the investigation continues. Did Stephen Lim Kor Kor dig himself a bigger hole, or is he an investing genius? A few months ago, I actually posted a video analyzing Stephen Lim Kor Kor's purchase, and I tried to answer the question whether he will make money or not, but I didn't have a lot of details back then. But now with the new video, he has shared more details, and he's transparent enough to share the contract itself. Of course, he blancoed out the address and postal code. He also showed the owner of the unit signing the contract with him. So Stephen Lim Kor Kor is a very transparent guy. This new video is very juicy because it reveals details that we were asking before in a previous video, and now with more details, let's finally answer the question: does this purchase make any financial sense, and is it good for anyone? Now, if you're watching me for the first time, hello, I'm Mark. I used to be an MOE teacher for 5 years. I left the service in 2019 because I was feeling burnt out. I was feeling that my savings weren't catching up enough with inflation and everything. I couldn't even afford a house. The worst part is I couldn't even buy a BTO because I balloted for so many times and failed so many times. But that spurred me to understand more about property market, and then somehow I became a property investor. By buying properties, I got my passive income, and with passive income, I decided to leave my job. And so today, I'm having my 12th property already, and also helping people to make better property decisions. Now, for those who missed the earlier video, this is just a recap. In the very first video, Stephen Lim Kor Kor told us that he had purchased the master bedroom. He did not tell us how much he paid. He did not say how much percentage shares he got of that property. All he did was to give us a video walkthrough of his beautiful master bedroom and said that it was part of a 3-bedroom apartment. He showed us things like the wonderful view from his bedroom that includes a swimming pool. He showed us the digital door lock on his master bedroom door. He showed us the toilet, as well as many other things that is in his bed. Like I said, Stephen Lim is very transparent. So at that point, it essentially appeared that he has access to the master bedroom and he has a lock, so nobody can disturb him as well.
Buyer agreement to purchase 10% of condo unit at 100k SGD, 100,000 SGD from seller, irregardless whatever the valuation of this unit, not including the individual don't touch necessary costs or legal fees involved for this transaction to go through.
So then what does a new video reveal? A lot of things. Well, first thing, the new video revealed that Stephen Lim Kor Kor actually paid $100,000 for 10% share of the property. That means the seller sold him 10% and the seller now has retained 90% share of the property. Now, before we go into the numbers and financial sense, right, I must comment on the English. Now, I'm not English teacher. I'm not sure whether they have vetted it through a lawyer because the contract is filled with grammatical errors and certain parts are quite Singlish and colloquial. So it's very interesting to read. It doesn't read like a legal proper document. Some parts are just hilarious. Like, please note, like nobody writes please notes in the contract, right? Please note that this is the buyer's major consideration. Now, by the way, consideration in a legal term is actually money. Consideration to take on this offer generally offered by the seller on the 8th of December 2024. So you know when this happened. Sunday at Shaw Centre, food court around 7+ p.m. He has to write a history story there. And I really hope they even took a selfie together as evidence that this really happened. That's quite funny, honestly. So I think such an agreement will still hold water because there is money involved, there is signing, there is intention to create a business relationship. So I think this contract will still hold water. It's just that the English, if it's not written well, it may be subject to arguments or contestation later on. Now let's look at the numbers. Does this deal make financial sense? Now recall I managed to CSI the condominium, so I know exactly the condominium, and based on the recent transactions in that particular condominium, and he revealed that the size is 1141 square feet. So looking at this, 1141 square feet, actually there is a very recent transaction in October 2025. It went for exactly $1 million. Now recall that Stephen Lim Kor Kor paid $100,000 for 10% share, which means actually the whole property will be valued at $1 million. And this corresponds exactly to this 3rd October 2025 transaction, valuing the property at $1 million. Now, bear in mind, the transaction didn't happen in October 2025, it happened in December 2024. But in December 2024, there weren't many comparable transactions. The one I can find is much later. Maybe this one you can see 1141 square feet as well, $1.05 million. So, all in all, if you think about it, actually, Stephen Lim Kor Kor paid fair value for this property. He really paid 10%, and 10% is worth $100,000. But it gets more interesting. Now, the wording of the contract strongly suggests that Stephen Lim Kor Kor cannot be disturbed. He has exclusive use to the master and the master bathroom for as long as the lease lasts. And this condominium actually has 67 years left to go, which means even if the seller were to pass on, he can only control where the 90% of his share goes to. And even if he will it or sell it, whatever, to someone else, the master bedroom that Stephen Lim Kor Kor occupies and owns will still remain to Stephen Lim Kor Kor, and he cannot be disturbed. So I can see that this thing is going to last for as long as the lease is still there in the property, unless maybe Stephen Lim Kor Kor changed his mind. Maybe he wants to sell that 10% later on. Who knows? But what's also interesting is that in the contract, it doesn't say what he can do or he cannot do. So you can think of it as actually Stephen Lim Kor Kor may have the rights actually to rent out his master bedroom should he not want to stay there anymore. Because he has exclusive use and stay, does he also mean that he has exclusive say to what he wants to do about the master bedroom? Actually, chances are yes, because he had actually paid for it already. So he's an owner and there is no clause forbidding him from doing that. But then let's ask ourselves, who really wins in this transaction? So now let's flip the perspective. Suppose the seller did not sell this 10% to Stephen Lim Kor Kor for $100,000. Suppose the seller decide to just rent it out for the remaining 67 years of the property. So let's ask ourselves, right, how much can a master bedroom be rented out for? I would say smelly is $1,000 because it is a condo, it has got pool, it has got aircon and everything. It's not the most well renovated or modern thing, alright, but it still has a bathtub and working toilet. So I think it should still at least go for $1,000, right? So conservatively speaking, $1,000 times 12 months times 67 years would become about $800,000. And let's be even more conservative, even if he rents out half the time, he's going to get $400,000. So from this angle, right, actually Stephen Lim Kor Kor got a better end of the deal, right? Because the owner could have netted $400,000 to $800,000, but Stephen Lim Kor Kor only paid $100,000 for it. And not to forget, right, typically, if you look at the space allocation, a master bedroom should occupy more than 10% of the entire floor area. I would say it should occupy about 20 to 25% of the entire floor area actually, including the master bath. So actually, if you ask me, Stephen Lim Kor Kor should have paid more than $100,000. Or in other words, right, if he wanted exclusive use of the master room and the bath, he should be paying more and he shouldn't be just paying for 10%. So in my perspective, I think the seller has sold it like in an undervalued basis, but I hope the seller has been properly advised and it's a willing buyer, willing seller. And since the contract is done, it is what it is. But that's not the end, because the contract also talks about other things like the sharing of utilities, how to share property tax, sharing of maintenance fees. So these provisions are quite sensible and it kind of shows that someone, okay, maybe a lawyer or somebody, has actually guided them to even talk about these things in the contract. Now that said, I still have two remaining concerns. Number one, is this transaction officially lodged in the title deed, right? Because when you ask for the ownership proof, it must reflect on the title deed that Stephen Lim Kor Kor owns 10% of the property, because if this is not done, it can actually result in legal contestation. Usually this is done by lawyers and then stamp duty will have to be paid for this 10% to be recognized in the title deed. And my second concern is that resale and even renting out would be extremely difficult in the future. Now you see, if the 90% owner would one day ever want to sell the property, it would be very hard to sell a 3-bedroom apartment with no master bedroom. So you think of how would a homeowner ever want to move into a 3-bedroom apartment knowing that he or she has no access to the master bedroom. Not only that, right, he or she has to contend with Stephen Lim Kor Kor coming in through the main door every day, yeah, and then say hi and everything. So that I think is very, very unlikely. And if an investor were to come and buy, then the investor probably, right, may buy, may consider, but he or she must know that he's just dealing with the rest of the area plus the 2 bedrooms. And then it's kind of a very awkward arrangement actually. It's not impossible, but it's just very awkward. And last but not least, I just go back to my previous point. If Stephen Lim Kor Kor has the right to rent out his master room, it means that whoever is occupying the remaining part of the house, right, will have no say of who is actually coming into the house and who is using the master room, because I think Stephen Lim Kor Kor doesn't need the consent of the 90% owner. So you're looking at a situation like the place is like a hotel. Some people come in, some people come out, and nobody actually has full say over the whole house. Yet they all come in through the same main door, but they have the say of their own portions of the house. I think it's just an awkward arrangement. So, what do you think of this arrangement? Do you really think Stephen Lim Kor Kor is a financial genius? Do you think he got a better deal, or are you sympathetic for the 90% owner? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But hey, this might be the last time we are seeing each other if you're not subscribed. So if you want to see more content like this, you want to see my videos, do remember to click subscribe, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.